was there. We spoke of was and when, although I wasn't there. He said I was his friend, which came as some surprise. I spoke into his eyes. I thought.
From wiping out military bases without anyone noticing to fighting against modified superhumans, to going punch for punch against mecha robots. Metal Gear Solid V: The Phantom Pain might be the most insane but fun game I've played in my life, maybe becoming my game of the year while coming out almost 10 years ago, and is still trading blows with the games that are being released now visually and mechanically. Either way, you could say that I am a bit late to this party, and honestly, we didn't get here easy, as this crazy over-the-top Hideo Kojima title is a crazy roller coaster that keeps on going. And as the suggested time of completion is over 45 hours for a single-player game, it will bring a lot of ups and downs for an infrequent gamer compared to a more traditional length single-player game. So, if you have limited time on your hands as a casual, should you also invest your time into this adventure? This is the question that hopefully I can answer during this video, and if you had any doubts on if you should play this masterpiece of a game. So, with that, get your beverage of choice, maybe some snacks, and let's begin. So with that, let's begin with the gameplay. As the man, the myth, the legend said in VGHS, it's all about the game. And while we're talking about the gameplay, I've chosen to show gameplay from 2 of my streams, more specifically 2 points in the first half of the game, Afghanistan and Africa. And yes, you heard it right. By the first half, I do mean the first 20 hours of gameplay, as this is how long it takes to unlock, understand, and somewhat master all the mechanics of this game. Also, hopefully by only showing these parts, I'll avoid any big spoilers. But if you want to check anything in more detail, feel free to browse my live stream VODs, link down below in a playlist for more detailed gameplay look. Otherwise, MGSV is a third-person stealth game that brings heavily detailed gameplay mechanics which might seem overcomplicated at first, but don't worry, as the game does take time to intuitively and slowly explain most of the basics. But the problems arise with all the small gameplay details that don't really get explained or shown and are really up to the player to figure out. For example, the body controls. I learned about them on stream from chat only after unlocking Quiet, which is quite late into the first half of the game. Body support. Ooh, okay. Wow, I only now find out about this. I've played this game for so long. With how actually detailed they can be, helping you complete missions much more easily, it was a little bit of a, how is this not explained earlier? Or what the E-prompt did up until much later into the game when I accidentally pressed it, as up until that moment when an enemy approached me, I thought that the person icon meant to call the enemy closer for an execution. Oh, I can call him. Should we do that? Nah, this... But turned out it was to hide and not get noticed as easily while laying. Objectively speaking, this could also be a good thing, as the game gives you all the tools to complete the game without overcomplicating, and it leaves it up to the individual players to figure out how much deeper into the mechanics they want to dive. This brings me to the second not so positive element of a casual player in particular, which is if you have 1 day a week, maybe less, maybe more to play, each session begins with reminding yourself about all these mechanics, which could give unwanted results for some missions if you forgot something. Either way, Even speaking as a casual, these things didn't really impact my enjoyment of the game. Also, a thing to mention is that, of course, being a stealth primary game, the game prioritizes stand there. And yes, you can go guns blazing, but in that case, your mission ratings will be lower and the overall difficulty climb will be much higher, with enemies becoming more bullet spongy. So, I would advise on a restart, and if it really doesn't go your way, only then resorting to being an action hero. So, the base gameplay loop might seem quite slow for a lot of gamers, especially these days when everything is more fast-paced, but if you can get through the first few missions with enjoyment, I don't think this will be a problem. Another fun mechanic that I enjoyed was language-based, as to understand your enemies you had to capture a translator/interpreter that would teach you the language, giving you subtitles like in a movie.
We found out there's an English-speaking soldier somewhere in the region. He's a language specialist. His role is to translate information related to the West into Russian. If we can get him to join us, we'll have the upper hand in information warfare. Find this language specialist and extract him.
Keeping up with fun mechanics of the game is the night and day cycle, as well as all the environmental weather cycles, which can make every gameplay scenario unique to each player, as well as give you certain advantages and disadvantages, making you try out different tactics and gameplay strategies in each mission. I really love this mechanic as it gave me some great opportunities and moments in the game. For example, in one of the earlier missions I had to extract a prisoner. While being too cautious, I wasted quite a bit of time, but also gave myself the advantage of having a guard change when entering the area. Right? My question still is... Oh wait! Are they all going to bed? It's a guard change. They're going to bed. Whoa! They're going to bed, which means now most of them are gonna sleep. I gotta act quick. Which meant that everyone was going to bed, and while the new guards were arriving, a sandstorm started giving me a perfect entry and exit, setting me up for an easy in and out the mission area. I loved it as it just boosted the immersion into the game world, and this feature is boosted even more by giving you a reason to listen to the mission briefing, letting you choose what time to deploy. There are also other environmental events like rainfall that let you move more freely. Yeah, so there's a lot of different options. Another quite important mechanic is the time mechanic, mainly because the main story is structured in individual missions. This gives some missions multiple phases depending on how long it takes you to complete them.
Can't have much left in him. I give him 3 days tops.
This was quite interesting, as usually the prompt for this would be that the target is moving to a different location or is being moved to a different location, making you either go in as fast as possible to capture or eliminate the target before they arrive somewhere, or vice versa, follow the target up until a more opportune moment. This could also exhibit in some different ways where you might need to follow someone, but if you get into where the target might be already or might lead to earlier, might get you to skip a whole mission section, making it way easier to get a higher ranking, S rank being the best. Going back to more important mechanics, the mother base, which is quite an important part of the game as you will be building it up from the start of the game. Honestly saying, I did not dwell too much into the mother base building outside of the necessary upgrades to continue the game or progress the upgrade system, evolving Venom's gear in conjunction with enemies becoming more adept. As in this game, depending on your gameplay style, enemies will start to adapt. For example, if you play stealthily, enemies will start putting up fake soldiers, or also by killing with headshots, the enemies will more often wear helmets. Also, in my eyes, the importance of mother base was instantly diminished by the moment you couldn't instantly go to missions, and surpassed by ACC, Aerial Command Center, where you actually manage your staff/missions. Which made me feel like there was supposed to be something more to mother base, but in the end became more of a safe spot where you keep running into people for morale boosting or some sneaky cutscenes. Either way, I would also like to say that I played the game on PC with mouse and keyboard, and although Venom's movement is highly detailed, it was quite hard to actually put it to use, as with so many controls being next to each other made for quite a huge case of fat fingering the wrong button, which made me feel quite confident that the primary way to play this game was meant to be with a controller. You can kind of notice that as there is never a mouse and keyboard logo but a controller. To be fair, while playing the game for longer sessions, these things aren't really that bad, but if you are a casual who might not have that much time, I'd suggest trying it out with a controller first. And honestly, these are just some gameplay quirks and features that stood out for me to talk about, but there are so many more different things and ways and features in this game that it's just impossible to condense it all in this one video, like the iDroid, which is basically the menu system through which you control everything. I didn't even mention that, like, what? And there's also actually still YouTube channels making videos showing different gameplay features and details up until today. Overall, all I would like to say is that if you want to play a game solely for its game part, this is a perfect candidate. And with that, let's move on to... Okay, before we start on the story, I gotta tell you now, I loved it. And experiencing it all with you through my streams was an amazing experience. And all the confusing moments to watching explanation videos and reading up on the lore, the story of Metal Gear Solid V got me hooked into the funky world created by Kojima, and I enjoyed every single moment of it. But actually, it's not really as clear-cut as it would seem with the fan base of Metal Gear Solid. It's actually quite firmly divided with opinion on how good the story is. As on one side we have the fanatics that say its storytelling is a work of masterpiece, while the other half say it's quite generic and are there fully for the gameplay, with the story being a small cherry on top, so your mileage may vary. Either way, at the very bottom of this mother base of a story, it is a typical save the world one-man army type of story, just like all the 90s spy thriller movies that Kojima got influenced by. But in my opinion, it gets balanced towards being good because of all the small details Kojima has put in and the juicy filler in the middle that perfects it. Although to be fair, I will admit there are some plot twists that are a bit too much and honestly saying quite a lot of overcomplicated solutions to many story elements, but most of the time, those crazy moments are the ones that give the best follow-up missions and give the game a more complete feel. To be fair, the story of Metal Gear Solid V in this matter is quite similar to the gameplay of Metal Gear Solid V, with it being quite simple from the outside and generic, but for those who want to bring extra attention and want to dwell deeper, you're welcome to bury yourself in this world of espionage, as it is quite easy to do that, because there is a lot of material and info that is easily available and will only require your time. The only gripe for me that might not be a gripe for others was the main mission structure from the menu, as I felt it worked against the flow of the story by having these hard-cut endings. Oh! I did it. I did it. This becomes quite apparent towards the last half of the first chapter, as you have these huge disconnects with the individual missions where you get thrown back into the ACC with a to be continued screen. And yes, there are other games that do this, but for some reason it rubbed me the wrong way in MGSV. I do understand why it was done, but in the end it felt like the story part of the game would try to force itself into the gameplay part while still trying to sustain these hard cuts between Mother Base, ACC, and the open worldish gameplay. In conclusion, if you have never played a Kojima title, I bet you will enjoy it. It's a roller coaster worth going on. And with that, let's get to. Alrighty, about the visuals, I played the game on PC, so your mileage may vary on the specific graphics, as they might be different, as this game came out on both last-gen consoles. That goes back to 360 and PlayStation 3. To be fair, the game is beautifully optimized if you choose to play it on PC, and it has plenty of different visual settings to play around with. and fully maxed out it holds up great in 2025, especially with its highly detailed character models. There were only a few graphical things that took me out, and those were the sometimes low quality ground textures or water textures, like near the mother base maybe, but honestly, because of how the game is presented with the lighting and overall composition of where everything is, like for example buildings, bushes, trees, and other objects and structures, you don't really notice any of the shortcomings or visual misses. A huge carry in this regard is also the animation of everything, making people / their character models and objects have more life in them than many AAA titles have. You also can't talk about Metal Gear Solid V visual style without mentioning the Kojima spice that gets added to every cinematic scene, by making you feel like there's an actual crazy stunt camera guy filming the whole game and zooming in on all the important parts of a scene. Right? This was actually a bit distracting at first, the random zoom-ins, but now I keep wanting to do these filming techniques anytime I'm filming anyone or anything. So I guess it just grew on me slowly with time. And honestly saying, that is it for the visuals. You've seen them throughout the video so far. There isn't really much more to say. They just look great for the time and even for today. So yeah, with that, let's move on to from visual to audio. As I don't really understand any musical theory, this will be a short one. All I can say is that music is appropriate for every moment, maybe too orchestral for my liking, but composed beautifully. Quick intervention from Editing Colibri. My opinion while going through the soundtrack has changed quite a bit, as I have been listening to multiple songs from the soundtrack of this game while editing, and honestly it has opened my eyes to quite a few songs that will stay with me forever. With that, back to the video. Alrighty, so guns sound like guns. Alarms sound like alarms, and voice acting is top notch. This is understandable as being a stealth game, and already knowing the attention of detail in this game from Kojima, everything is mastered to perfection. This though brings me to my only gripe, once again, as at least from what I understood on PC, you can't change the volume of anything in-game, which was sad as I have everything set to perfection on my system, my PC system, and each time watching this game I had to readjust everything sound-wise around it. This is another double-edged sword, as this feature makes it impossible for you to make the excuse that you didn't hear something, as everything that you should hear and shouldn't is mastered in a way that you couldn't hear anything you shouldn't and heard everything you should. That's sound and music. One last point I want to talk about is the second half of the game, as 90% of this review / guide was written while playing through the first half. I just want to mention the insane difficulty jump after completing the first chapter, mission 31. But this difficulty jump is apparent only on specific missions that you have already done. They are somewhat like reruns, but with an added difficulty multiplier. For example, stealth only. Although I actually loved these at first, as they made me replay some interesting missions with a new approach, as time went on it did feel quite cheap, and I feel like there could have just been a menu with these alternate difficulty add-ons similar to old Call of Duty or Halo campaign. Either way, these missions will be a good test of how you are at this game, as they will force you into quite tricky situations. Without getting into too much detail, I do feel like the overall story and gameplay quality drops significantly at this point in the game. Not to say it gets bad, but it definitely loses that spice and eagerness to find out what will happen next, as the story takes more of a back seat. Okay, there's been a lot to talk about, and honestly I didn't even scratch the surface of this game. While writing the script, I found myself remembering more and more things to add as time passed, and I think just like Konami put an end to Metal Gear Solid, I shall put an end to this video. A few quick add-ons. It's actually MGSV, not MGS5, 5, as the V stands for Venom Snake, and also the amazingly amazing community. The experience streaming this game was amazing, as I got quite a few regulars that were passionate about this game, helping me out through the game with solid advice and just general good vibes. Thank you all for joining my streams. To be honest, to be fair, there was some tough love because of my playstyle at some points, but in the end we got through it all. And yeah, the community is well and active. There is still a competitive scene through the FOBs, and with the game's advanced mechanics and quite timeless visuals, I don't think it will ever extinguish. And with that, I think it's all. Definitely leave a like if you liked the video, subscribe, and comment down below about things you remember most fondly about this game and about your opinion on it. I'm open to all of that. And with that, if this video feels unfinished, I'll leave it up to Kojima to explain it. It's meant to be like that. And with that, wow. Okay, that was Metal Gear Solid V. Thanks for watching.
V has come to.
V has come too.